For the first time ever, the mayor and his 4 challengers make a final push for votes right here at Columbia College. Each candidate will face Columbia students, faculty, and staff as they make one last effort for votes before the February 24th election. It's down to the wire. This forum has been made possible by the NABJ, the National Association of Black Journalists, CCABJ, the Columbia College Association of Black Journalists, Columbia Links, and the Columbia Chronicle.
It's particularly resonant that this forum is being held here at Columbia College Chicago because of the topic material, and I want to tell you a little story that clarifies what I mean. I was recently in Washington, D.C., being interviewed by the editorial board of Inside Higher Education, which is one of the country's big publications on higher education. And they were asking me what's important at Columbia College Chicago. So I was going through my, I'm trying to get down to an elevator speech. I don't have it yet. And I used the word diversity. And the editor stopped me immediately and said, look, every college president who comes in this room says diversity is important. How can you possibly tell me something that's different? I said, oh, just give me a minute. So I said, look, in higher education in this country, the word diversity is traditionally code for quota. And usually what institutions mean by diversity is the ability to publish lists of how many purple people, how many pink people, how many polka dotted people, without any real, and that's diversity. And what I told him was, at Columbia College Chicago, we fundamentally believe that if we do not succeed in building an environment which is diverse and a community which is inclusive, we cannot deliver our educational mission. If we surround our students with sameness, we will send them out into the world with an attitude of replication. And that it is only by honoring the power of difference that we create the possibility that our students will be creators and makers in the future. So the editor looked at me, thank you, and he said, yeah, that's kind of different. And I said, there's one other thing that I want you to know. We're also exploring what diversity looks like in the curriculum at Columbia. We're not there yet. But we're asking the question, how do you take a curriculum that's focused on creative practice and open it up to really help young people understand that there are multiple perspectives, multiple traditions that are all worth studying and need to be examined if a young person is going to develop their own authentic creative voice. So his comment to me was, yeah, you've convinced me it's different at Columbia College Chicago. So anyway, welcome to you all. I'm delighted you're here. Like you, I am very much looking forward to hearing tonight's discussion and conversation, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much for being here. As Art mentioned, the format tonight is that we will have each of the 5 mayoral candidates present to the organization and speak on whatever it is they want to speak on, recognizing they're speaking to people who are interested in issues of significance to the African American community. In the audience, which appears right now to be about 50% membership and 50% Columbia College, we have journalists, we have students, we have public relations professionals, and we have academe. So it's a very intimate audience, Mayor, and for all the other candidates who are here. First of all, we'd like to bring to you, we're very honored for the commitment, Mayor Rahm Emanuel.
Yes.
I think, as I understand, we got about 5-10 minutes, and then we'll do questions.
10 minutes.
Okay.
A few questions.
Okay. Let me thank you. Thank everybody. I want to thank Columbia, most importantly, willing to host this forum. It's an important forum. 4 years ago, the status quo, in my view, and our politics was failing the people of the city of Chicago and the residents. We had lost, between 2001 and 2010, 200,000 people. One of the biggest exodus in a decade from the city of Chicago. Companies and businesses were also leaving besides people. Where other cities had seen a gain, Chicago had seen a loss. And that was because the status quo wasn't working in many different ways, both on the financial side, education, public safety, a series of things. And because the city had walked away from meeting its challenges head on, people were basically taking and voting with their feet. And I believed fundamentally that if you challenged and made fundamental change, people will have the confidence to come to a city that was willing to shape its future, not run away from it. And in that process, if we fast forward to the end, Chicago does lead the country in corporations relocations. It leads the country in job creation of any major city. It leads the country as #1 in each of these areas in direct foreign investment. It leads the country in families returning back to a city. It also has the #1 neighborhood library system in America, and also the #1 park system in America. And I still believe the #1 Little League in America.
All right.
Now, that didn't just coincidentally happen. It was because we were willing to do the tough things, the necessary things, to move forward. On the financial side, balanced 4 budgets in a row, without a property sales or gas tax increase, eliminated the per-employee head tax. We used to tax people that created jobs. Every year, I put money back into the rainy day fund to the tune of about 45 to 50 million, rather than take it out to meet operating expenses. And every year, we increased our investment in summer jobs, after school, and early childhood education. When I started, 14,000 kids were employed in the summer during summer jobs. Last year, we hit 22,500. In November, when we had the vote, 24,000. So in 4 years, from 14 to 24,000 kids. And I can go on at length about the difference of what those summer jobs have meant to those young men and women. Also a 40% increase in after-school activity. And for the first time ever, starting next year, because of the standards we raised, we will have universal pre-K for all 4-year-olds from a family of need in the city of Chicago, complemented by a full day of kindergarten for every child in the city of Chicago for the first time ever. But that was putting our fiscal house in order, and also, both for the laborers and municipal fund, we resolved the pension questions, gave people the certainty there will be a retirement check there when they retire, did it in a responsible way, of which 2/3 of the savings are with reforms and efficiencies. And for the first time ever, 50% of our pensions are now on a course of stability and also able to meet its obligation to pay people's retirement in a way that doesn't drain the city or throw it off financially. On education, before I became mayor, 4 out of 10 kids were dropping out of high school. Just 4 years ago, 42% of our children were dropping out of high school. In 2 years' time, 8 out of 10 kids will be graduating from high school. You will not see another city, major city in America, with a big swing in high school graduation rates. I also just, and we're going to start it next year, the Chicago Star Scholarship, which the president has copied, which is if you earn a B average in Chicago public high schools, community college will be free. Only city in America. No family, and in 3 weeks, we haven't really advertised it, over 1,000 people have signed up for it. No family will go take a second mortgage or a second job trying to give their kids a shot at the American dream. And for the first time ever, you earn a B average, community college will be free. Our ACT scores, highest ever. Graduation rate, highest ever. Attendance to school last year, highest ever, even in the worst winter. Well, we tripled the size of the safe passage routes in the city of Chicago. 86,000 kids are now covered by it. We also have a near majority of our kids, for the first time ever, meeting or exceeding national standards in reading and math. Now, personally, I do not think that just in 3 years our kids and our teachers got that much better. The system, in my view, was stacked against them. Half the kids in the city of Chicago used to get 2 hours a day at kindergarten. 12,000. 15,000 used to get 7 hours a day. And trust me, if you went through the map, the kids that were getting 2 hours a day were the very kids that needed to get 7 hours a day. And they were paying a political price or an educational price for the rest of their lives because our politics relegated half our kids to 2 hours a day at kindergarten. Every child in the city of Chicago now gets a full day of kindergarten, regardless of where they live, regardless of what their race is, regardless of what their background is. 7-hour day. The last city that did not provide it. We have universal pre-K for every 4-year-old. We eliminated the shortest school day and the shortest school year in the country and gave every child a full school day and a full school year. We took the community college system and we took it from the worst graduation rate in America at 7%. It doubled in 3 years, and in 2 more years it will be tripled to 22%. The World Bank came in to study our college-to-career model and called it the single best career system in America. Now, I put blood, sweat, and tears into that. The other reason is the Chicago Community College system is the second largest in America. More adults and kids go to that system than all four-year institutions combined in the city of Chicago. And they were being relegated to an educational system that did not provide a job or a career, in the same way that what Columbia is providing you as a ticket to your future, we were not providing the kids that go to Harold Washington, Malcolm X, Kennedy King, Truman, Wright, and Olive Harvey. And Richard J. Daley, in case you forgot the other one. It's not only now that, but we're also now providing families free community college. And of the bulk of the 1,000, you should know, they're going there for 2 years so they can then transfer. So the parents can get their kids to a 4-year college with only having to pay for 2 years. And that is going to be the future to guaranteeing more and more kids get a chance at the middle class life and the middle class dream. I got 4 minutes. I got a lot to say in 4 years and 4 minutes. No, I got it. I'm going to take your questions, or as Henry Kissinger used to say, does anybody have any questions for my answers? That's a joke. But in every way, what we did was challenge something that wasn't working for people. Our job is not done. We have a lot more work to do, but we're no longer running away from what we need to do. We're meeting our challenges head on. We're finally, I think, both fiscally, economically, as well as educationally, doing what we need to do to give the city a chance to right its ship. Now, the city of Chicago is known as the city that works. I will not rest until it works for everyone. Fundamentally about education, but I can go on also about what we're doing in our public transportation system, our libraries, our parks, and our public safety, because if those are the fundamental things that give the conditions for a neighborhood to grow economically, as well as a place for families to raise their kids. If we do the 5 basic fundamental investments right, public schools, public safety, public transportation, public parks, and public libraries, that creates the context, the platform for all the other things that you want to see in a neighborhood to succeed. Thank you.
Stay here, stay here.
I was giving you the mic.
I'm mic'd up,
okay.
actually. Thank you so much, Mayor, and thanks for keeping it so succinct. We really, really appreciate it, and we know your time is very limited. So one of the first questions, we're just going to ask every candidate 3 questions, and the first question is tied to today's news, JRW. Wow. The entire city is heartbroken, and we would like to know, what is your reaction to JRW? We heard you quoted all day saying how wonderful they were, how terrible this is. We want to know outright, do you think they should have been stripped of their championship, and is there anything that you can do about it?
Well, what I really think, given all the cameras, I don't think I should do, since this is a family-friendly audience. I don't want to really say it does warrant. First of all, I called the president of the International Association of Little League, and I asked him personally to reverse this decision. I said that the kids that played, I said they revealed their character on the field and they revealed their character off the field. Now, I do want us to put all the recriminations aside. Do not forget the kids in this sense, not just that they revealed their character, both on and off the field. There's a reason they captured not just this city, they captured the country. They're true pros. And for them, you can say whatever you want to say in the sense of taking away, but you can't take away the experience from them. This will be a life-transforming experience. I told the president, or the chairman, I don't know his title, of the International Little League, I said, the people you want to punish or hold accountable are not the kids. Your punishment is holding them accountable for other people's actions. I think you're teaching them exactly the wrong lesson. You want to teach these kids or hold people accountable? Hold the adults that did this accountable. Your actions are holding the kids accountable. This is exactly the wrong lesson of where accountability lies. I don't think I was persuasive given he wanted, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but let me just say, he thinks he has to be set a set of rules that are clear and unambiguous, not just for this moment, but for all other moments, and not bend. But I think his decision, I don't see him bending from that decision, but I picked up the phone and called and directly talked to him.
Thank you. Second question is...
can I say one last thing?
Sure.
I do want us all to remember that Well, maybe some people do agree. I don't think anybody agrees with this decision. The kids will have this, the journey they had to Pennsylvania, they will always have. And that can never be taken away from them.
Exactly.
Sorry.
Thank you. The second question is Obama Library. I don't think it's disputed that many people in the Black community feel that the Obama Library belongs in Chicago. And now with the word that the First Lady will make the final decision and that the First Lady has a preference for Harlem, New York, we want to know what it is that you are prepared to do to ensure that the Obama Library comes to Chicago.
Well, let me just say, having been the President's Chief of Staff, I usually don't make it a goal to get between couples. I know that's not where the Chief of Staff goes or a friend. As my view, and I really do believe this, it can be on the south side, it can be on the west side, but it cannot be on the upper west side. Okay? Cannot. This is too important. And the reason first of all, if we're going to talk about economic development throughout the city, and having worked on one presidential library in my life before, this is not just a library. This is hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars of economic development, job creation. Just one example, not that it's going to, I don't know if it's going to be on the south side or west side. I want it to be in Chicago, the president picks where. But near Washington Park, there's already a developer buying property for development. That's exactly the stimulus you want from this. It's a transformative moment, which is why we can't let it go. Now, they raised questions. While I'm standing here, the Park District today, right now, is having the set of votes to do the things that I need them to do so then the city, which is what the foundation wants to deal with, they don't want to deal with any other entity, they want to just deal with the city, to clarify and remove any barriers for their ability to pick Chicago.
Can you say tonight that you will not let that library slip through your fingers?
Well, I will. Let me say this. I started this job 6'2" and 250 pounds, and this is all I got left. I'm 148, dripping wet. The only reason I'm like dripping, I'm standing here is I did work in the White House, and I know what it's like to have a First Lady. Now, I'm not sure that I believe everything. I don't mean to say this much to journalists. I don't believe everything I read.
What are you trying to say?
I'm trying to say I don't believe everything y'all write. Okay. And I've been in moments through my career of working in Congress, President Clinton, President Obama. I know you work at truth, work a little harder. So let me just say this, I don't believe everything I read. That said, I know what the foundation wants to see, and I'm going to make sure we get it done. Okay.
Last question, because we know you have to go.
Because and I will do everything I can so the President knows that this is where he started his career. There's a reason President Clinton put it in Little Rock. Jimmy Carter put it in Atlanta. Ronald Reagan put it in California. I'm not waiting for another president to come from the south side of Chicago to get a library here. Okay?
All right, that'll be forever, right? Okay, last question. From the students here, many of the journalism students came up with some of the questions, and one of the questions they wanted to ask you is, there's a lack of hospital trauma centers on the south and west sides of Chicago. Students and young people, the 20-something generation, have been agitating and really, really working hard, protesting, meeting with the University of Chicago, and really trying to get a trauma center on the south or the west side of Chicago. What is your position on that particular issue that is of such interest to the young people, and what are you prepared to do about it?
Well, first of all, I've already done things on it with the University of Chicago and the President. And I've been in constant and regular conversations. I believe this is essential because of the need on the south side, which is a whole other topic, and I know we don't have time for. When they first presented their proposal in October, it was quite clear, and I told them, but as did others, so I'm not limited, that it was inadequate to the needs of the community. The U of C is working on a proposal now, and my view is that will be public or become public. I don't want to put an exact time frame, but relatively soon.
So you're saying that we may soon see a trauma center?
I'm not in control of it. Why don't you go back to asking me to get between the President and the First Lady again? I'm not in the control of it, but I do think that we have not heard the last of it. And I think the issue of a healthcare facility to address trauma is going to be addressed. and I know that they're working on it, but we're not there yet.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything else you would like to say to the audience before you get off the stage?
Sure. I want to say to the students, while all of us who exist here on the public side have a certain view of journalists or journalism, I think you're at a very important point in our political and democratic process in our society. I actually think you're pursuing a very important profession in helping us as a city, a country, wherever you land. Because our ability to make the decisions we need to make as a city is in large measure, not totally, but in large measure dependent on you doing your job to the best of your ability to get truth. To hold, yes, us accountable, but to also understand and get to the bottom of the story. And so I compliment you for seeking the careers you seek, for the sacrifices you make, the struggles you make, because I think what you're about to do and embark on, if you pursue it, is a noble profession.
Good evening, everybody. Good. As I always start out my conversation most of the time, thank the Lord for His amazing grace. So to all of the board of directors, people who's here, and to all the students, my name is Dr. Wille Wilson, and I'm running for mayor of the city of Chicago, right? So if I understand this right, you only have 10 minutes to talk and give my viewpoints. You all happen to be blessed to be able to have a college to go to and just to attend to. I didn't get the education. We ran away from home at age 13, so I got a 7th grade education. So we ran from South. I'm basically like 2 generations of slavery. So we ran away from home at 13 years of age, left and went to Delray Beach, Florida. Left from there and we came to Chicago. And we asked McDonald's, found a Ray Kroc for a McDonald's franchise. So he gave me 1. From there we left and got, I think it was 5 or 6 from there. And then after that we left McDonald's as a franchise. And we went to a Omar Medical Supplies. And so from 20 cents per hour down south that I was making, so today we own a company that does a little bit slight about $6 million a year in business. It is an international company. And so we work hard and we struggle. And basically we still work today, pretty tough and pretty hard. We basically work, except when I go to sleep, 24/7 almost, all right? But I do it because I love it, because we want to help people, We want to help everybody regardless of what color you happen to be. We understand the situation that there's African American, there's Asian, there's Hispanic, and there's other class and race of people in the United States. And there's problem, there's problem exists out here. You have to face them, and so you got to deal with some people that deal with the hand that you're dealt. The biggest thing about it, don't get bitter. Always be calm, always still treat the person nice, regardless of how that person treats you. You're gonna have to understand that everything's not done the way that you may feel. Most students get out of college that I associate myself with, and we're hired over probably my course at McDonald's and other opportunities that we're giving employees, probably over 25 to 30,000 employees. Some of them went to be doctors and lawyers and business people, But the point of it is that once you finish school and you get your degree, you need more than a degree in order to get the good jobs and the businesses, all right? Some people are fortunate to be able to do that. Some different race of people maybe get one faster than the other one. I'll just tell you, plain facts of life. Today, as I move around the country, move around the world, I understand the problem with race relationship, and so, but yet we still won't get bitter about it. There's certain places that I won't go in Chicago after 6 or 7 o'clock at night. Certain places I won't go into the United States. Although we have the dollars that we can do what we want to do as far as money-wise, but for as safety-wise, I don't do it. I understand from where I came, but it still exists. So I'm running for mayor to try to help bridge those gaps and bring things together, So what we have to realize is that we have to love everybody and do everything that we can do to help everybody. Public safety is a situation. Education out there is a priority. Economic development, economic empowerment. My recommendation is this: once you get out of school, not talk so much about getting a job with a major corporation, but talk about the entrepreneur that you take and be able to start your own business. Then the money can circulate back into your community. Now, education, again, won't do it by itself. So my suggestion would be, look, as your mayor, we would make sure that we set trade schools up in college as well as high school, all right? That way, you get out, say you like doing mechanic work, okay? Different trade and things like that. So when you get out of there, then you have a good trade along with a good education, then you can get a job or start a business. Now, you can get the education, but if you don't have the money to get into business, so you got another issue. As your mayor, I would set up an economic development fund. The economic development fund will give you the opportunity to borrow money, get into business, and get started with your life. The other thing that I would do would make sure that the vacant lots, some of those schools that was closed, you know, but the vacant lot and things like that, why not let the young people, anybody else want to go into business, buy it for $1. Start your business. Got the fund set up, you know, and get started out so you can raise a family and take care of a family. People don't need to make minimum wage, they need to make far more than minimum wages, all right? You need to make up in $70, $80, $100,000 a year or more, plus. If you're not making $100,000 a year or more, or plus, it's kind of hard to live in a nice neighborhood that you want to live in too, all right? So we'll start out things of that nature as well, all right? So I encourage entrepreneurship, and I guess that's obvious because I'm an entrepreneur, all right? So you want to make sure that you can control and dictate your own life. You know, working for somebody else is okay if you love that's what you like doing. Everybody is not set out to be a business person. You know, in terms of myself, I didn't know what I was set out to be. I had to work to survive. I ended up in business, you know? So that's how you had to, what I ended up doing. But looking down back through history and looking at the future, you know, people ask me today, say, where do you go to school, where do you get your degree at? In college, I said, I didn't get a degree through college. They said, well, you look like you did. I said, my BA is born again, you know. That's what I always tell everybody, all right? Because it came from faith, all right, that encouraged me to do so. And if you happen to drop out of school for whatever reason, things of that nature, and I get ready to close on this, if you ever have to drop out of school, don't think you can't make it, you know. People say, okay, I talk in a certain way. Well, I do, but if I wanted to hire somebody to teach me, I got enough money to do that. Just pick the problem, okay? All right? But I don't want to do that because we have people out here that haven't got the opportunity to get a good education. You know, more than 75% of America doesn't get the good education or the good schools, you know. So I want to stay on a level with them. When I get to be mayor, I would do this. We'll have people who have education, the people who have in between, and the people who sleep down, drown on WACA, because we can learn from them. We all can learn together. Amen.
Perfect note to end on. You have criticized the mayor a number of times, just as you touched on this evening, about closing the 50 schools. So our question to you is, if you were elected, would you reopen those 50 public schools? If so, how would you pay for it? How many would you open? Well, the decision won't be mine to how many we open up. The decision would be to the community. You always understand you have to communicate with people if you're going to be successful in life, if you're going to live among people, all right? So you have to always communicate. We'll communicate with the student, the teachers, and the community. We'll then decide, let's say we decide to open up 50% of those schools. I believe it was 50 schools that was closed. And by the way, 88% of them was in the African-American community, 10% Latina, 2% other. So we would decide that together. Now, how we do this here and getting the fund, you don't raise taxes on people who losing their homes. I hate taxes, okay? So you do not do that.
You got to find other ways of bringing in dollars. You all probably heard me, I talked about open up Mag Field. Okay, $300 million a year, get your taxes, and, contracts and jobs. You heard me talk about the casino, $500 million to $800 million a year in the business. Take those dollars, let the city of Chicago, citizen of Chicago owns it, and if they end up doing that, then you take the dollars to lower your taxes and things down. Lower taxes keep people in town to buy gasoline versus going to other parts of the city.
So, Dr. Wilson, you're saying that you would reopen 25 schools?
If the community want to reopen 25 schools, makes sense, we'll do that. If the community say they want to open more, we'll do it. I'll be put in office because of the community. I'm here to serve, not to take and serve major corporations with $30 million and sell the city out.
Okay. During last night's debate, you were asked whether you would support legalizing recreational marijuana.
Well, as I said the same thing I said last night. Listen, you're going to smoke it anyway, so why not get the taxes?
Why would you support such a measure in light of the... All right, on a serious note, why would you support such a measure in light of the fact that critics say that marijuana is a gateway drug to more serious drugs?
Well, you know, look at it this way. A lot of our kids and students caught with an ounce of marijuana, they go to prison. That's not a reason to destroy their life. You know, it's not a reason to destroy their life. You know, listen, during my time, we may have a certain thing that we wanted to do. It was a generation, but you have to kind of make sure work with the generation, but don't put them in prison for life and destroy that. Let's talk. Let's educate the problem of the matter. You know, I'm passionate about this. Listen, guys, I'm going to take a check from the city of Chicago. I'm going to give it all away to non-for-profit. I don't care. You all get me for free, okay?
We have a couple of questions that we have asked the other candidates, one of those being today's news. The Jackie Robinson West team was stripped of its championship title. We'd like for you to respond. Just what do you think about that, and what would you do if you were mayor?
Okay. Is this my last question?
Well,
I need 15 seconds to close with my prayer.
Absolutely. That was the last question, yes.
Okay, good. Now, did Jackie Robinson thing?
Yes, it is.
I actually think Jackie Robinson thing, I basically think it's a lunatic. It's crazy. People out of their mind, okay? All right? That's how I feel about it. Listen, don't punish those young men, all right, for something that they didn't have control of. They work hard. They hit the ball. They threw curveball. They threw even slider that I couldn't even watch on TV fast enough, okay? These kids worked their heart out. In fact, today I made the announcement, look, you gotta hire some attorney to look into this thing. Today, it hurt me so bad, I said, look, I'm going to donate to the attorney who take on this case $10,000 for the fee out of my own money, pocket, because I'm serious about it. You can get emotional about it. Bottom line, it's going to take money to help get this thing looked into and help. These young men work hard. They're not in gang-related situation. They're motivated to do the right thing. Let's keep our youth motivated in a certain way. Let's brand Chicago with our students.
What do you want that attorney to do?
I want that attorney to look at whoever takes it on. I want to look into it and find other cases why they didn't do this. I want to look into international laws and make sure that their rights and things are being protected. I mean, look, what did they do about this guy, what's his name, they let the air out the football. He's still playing, all right? And so they didn't knock out the football league or got rid of Tom Brady, you know? They should have got rid of him because the ball was too soft, you know?
Mr. Wilson, you have a few minutes to conclude.
Y'all, I have to end my thing with prayer, because this is what gets me where I'm at, all right? All right, dear Lord, we thank you for your mercy and your grace. Thank you, dear Lord, for allowing us to come here. And we thank you, dear Lord, for the board of directors and the people and Dr. Tucker and all those nice guys and ladies, Art Norman, and all the people who made this possible, dear Lord. I hope that I've said some things that make sense in your heart and your eyesight, oh Lord. Teach us to love one another. Teach us to get along. Teach us to not to look at color, but look at the heart. Guide us in the way that you will guide us. For though I be free from all men, dear Lord, yet have I made myself a servant unto all, that I might gain the most. And David said, this way, said, surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. And dear Lord, we all should dwell in your house, Lord, forever and ever. The church say amen.
Thank you so much.
Absence from law school, and I helped to organize the Lawyers Committee for Harold. Served as president of law students for Harold Washington, served as his assistant scheduler, and then became his direct assistant. And in that capacity, I had the pleasure of traveling with Harold locally, nationally, and internationally. Sat in on 70% of his meetings, reorganized the departments of streets and sanitation, the Department of Water, the Department of Sewers, the Department of Inspectional Services, helped him to interview most of his department heads. He would tell his department heads, nobody speaks for me except for Bill Walls. I was 25 years of age, had awesome responsibility. Harold used to say there is no school for mayors, but if there was such a school, it's the school that he took me to. And I'm proud to stand here today as someone who's committed to making Chicago the place that it should be. Chicago is suffering. There are two Chicagos. There's a world-class Chicago and there's an underclass Chicago. That world-class Chicago is beautiful, it's safe, it's tourist-friendly, it's robust, it's full of resources and unlimited opportunities for the privileged few. That's the Chicago they love to brag about and showcase in the magazine. And then there's that underclass Chicago. Decaying neighborhoods, unsafe streets, people dodging potholes and bullets, abusive trigger-happy police, inferior city services, no jobs, no schools, no parks, no economic development, food deserts, slumlords, gas and electricity shut-offs, real life, red light cameras, blue light cameras, speed zone cameras, potholes everywhere, vacant lots everywhere. By design, it's not accidental. So my job is to bring attention to those things that most people don't experience. If you live on the north, northwest, and southwest sides of the city of Chicago, chances are you think Chicago is wonderful. This is the place. If you live on the south side, west side, it's kind of depressing. 97% of the young black men walking through the streets are unemployed. Those young men are between the ages of 18 and 25. Many of them are fathers. And I was a father at the age of 16. It's very difficult to go to see your child, and the mother and the grandmother want to know where are the Pampers, where's the Enfamil. Eventually, you're out of answers, and it gets more and more difficult for you to see that child. It's also difficult being a child and having a parent, male or female, that's in jail, and that's a reality. There are 2 million black folks in jail. Many of them are in jail for life, but then you have in other penal systems, like the county jails and city jails, millions of others. About 5.5 million others around the United States of America. That's 7 million people in jail, incarcerated, or in the system, and there are only 35 million black folks in the entire United States. Many of those people who are in jail are child rearing age. So they're the fathers of these young children who are the subject of discussion when people say, where are their parents? Their parents are in jail. That's the system. We have a prison industrial complex that makes money off of putting people in jail. And you have a lot of black folks who become the victims of that system. This isn't the first time. From 1619 to 1865, we had 246 years of legalized slavery in America. It took the Underground Railroad, the Civil War, the suspension of the Constitution, the Emancipation Proclamation, and 2 constitutional amendments to end that shamefully brutal institution. And people go about their lives every day as though it doesn't matter. Then we had 12 years of Reconstruction, and blacks were able to elect other blacks to positions of power, but that didn't last long. And then we had 100 years of Jim Crow, and the monikers of Jim Crow were blacks have no rights, which whites are bound to respect. The order of the day was separate but equal. We're still going through the same kinds of things here in the city of Chicago because Chicago is the most racially segregated city in America by the numbers. 90% of blacks in Chicago live in just 22 of Chicago's 77 communities. And those communities are 96% black. We have 33 communities that are 90% white and only 5% black. Racial segregation is the order of the day. And it's the south and west sides that are black and the southwest, northwest, north sides that are white. And it's like two different cities with two different mayors. You have the good Rom over here running the north, northwest, and southwest sides, and he implements best practices. For example, when structures go into foreclosure in the white community, he brings in the financial institutions, brings in the community, and they preserve and protect those properties until someone is ready to take them over. On the south and west sides, Rom has a program called Fast Track Demolition. They go in 3 weeks, they take a piece of property, board it up, put a red X on it, schedule it for demolition, and it's down in just a matter of another few weeks. So on the south side and west side, you have 13,500 vacant lots. Vacant lots don't generate any revenue. People don't pay property taxes because the city owns those vacant lots. And the city has to provide upkeep for those vacant lots and protect those vacant lots from vagrants and wrongdoers. On the northwest, southwest, and north side, we have 0 vacant lots. So that's just half the story. There's no economic development on the south and west sides of the city of Chicago. No grocery stores. There are food deserts in those 22 black communities. No fresh produce, fresh meat, no fresh dairy. You have mothers who are shopping in gas stations with their link cards. I want to get rid of link cards in the city of Chicago. I don't see any reason in this day and age that people should be learning and training their children to go and apply for public aid. Chicago has too much to offer. And if we treat everybody the same, if we treated everybody equally, if we developed each neighborhood on a mirror kind of basis, if we did the same thing on the south and west sides that we do on the north and northwest side, in the north side, and the south side and southwest side, Chicago would be a better place. And we'd be more competitive in this national and global economy. We cannot afford to lag behind the rest of the world. But as long as you have this drag on the south and west side, people unemployed, 44% of the people living below the poverty line, as long as you have an inferior system of education on the south and west sides, Chicago is going to continue to lag behind the rest of the world. We'll never be competitive. We live in a global economy. And today's global economy was made possible by the painstaking development of a global civil society. These were preachers and teachers and politicians and regular old family members and friends and consumers and companies who learn to communicate and cooperate with each other across all geographical, sociological, philosophical, ideological, political, all linguistic, all cultural barriers. They were determined to figure out who they were in life by comparing themselves to other people and making certain that the rest of the world wasn't getting ahead. And then along came the internet. And people lost their power. So then you had the 1% versus the 99%. Well, I'm fortunate that I represent the voice of the 99%. People who are just trying to get through life and be good to their neighbors. You know, so I fight for the homeless, the disadvantaged, the disabled, disconnected youth. I fight for our senior citizens. I fight for those people who live check to check. In a political race, that's almost a liability because those are the people without resources. So when they start talking about this person has $30 million, this person has $1.5 million, look at the people they represent. Rom doesn't get $30 million from average people. He gets $30 million from the corporations who want to buy Chicago. The corporations who would like to get a hold of all those vacant lots and turn them into luxury high-rise buildings which generate millions of dollars a year. He gets money from those persons who would love to do business with the city of Chicago. You know, the city of Chicago is a place where the mayor makes millionaires and turns millionaires into billionaires. But it's usually those people that he knows, like, and trusts that benefits from that system. So we got a lot of work to do. I would never, as mayor of the city of Chicago, suggest that we engineer the migration or assimilation of blacks into the white communities. That would only serve to destabilize those communities. History has taught us that it wouldn't make sense to do that. Instead, what I'd love to do is stabilize and empower those persons living in the African American communities and the other underserved communities, and rebuild those communities for their children with a commitment to diversity, inclusion, and mixed income communities. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm ready to...
I got some questions for you.
Great.
All right. Attorney Walls, we have a serious lack of trauma centers on the west and the south sides of Chicago. However, if a young black boy is shot on 111th Street in the Roseland community, he is maybe 25 minutes away from a trauma center because there is none on a nearby 111th Street. How do you fix that?
That's right. The nearest trauma center is Little Company of Mary, and a person would have to cross 4 railroad tracks. So imagine a railroad train coming across that track and you're laying there shot and bleeding to death and fighting for your life. It's a sin and a shame that we don't have trauma centers. The University of Chicago stopped accepting people. Trinity on 93rd Street stopped accepting people, and they eliminated trauma centers. Hospitals are not-for-profit organizations. Under my administration, to retain their not-for-profit status, they would have to develop trauma centers in the city of Chicago. Providence Hospital, let's make that a trauma center, level 1 trauma center. And if those hospitals elect to opt out, we'll allow that, but they'll lose their tax-exempt status, and that money that they pay in taxes, we would use to develop a trauma center.
The next question is from our students, journalism students. These are our anchor people, writers, reporters, editors, and photographers of tomorrow. The question, how would you make it easier for ex-felons to qualify for a business license?
Well, the first thing that we do on all licenses and all applications is take the box off of the application, so that a person has an opportunity to present themselves to the individual who makes that decision and doesn't get excluded simply because that box has a check in it that says, I have a background. We have to restore people to first-class citizenship. How do we make it easier for you to get a business license? We get rid of some of the red tape. We decentralize the program. Instead of having everybody come downtown, we allow you to come into your neighborhood and have a center there for business and economic development. A center that will not only allow you to apply for a license, but will direct you and assist you in applying for loans or the kind of grants that we intend to give small businesses in the city of Chicago. We think that rather than spending money trying to woo Boeing, McDonnell Douglas, Honeywell, and others to come to Chicago and bring their headquarters with 140 jobs, we'd much rather stabilize businesses in our community and develop businesses in our community.
Another question from one of our young people. Do you support establishing a casino in Chicago?
No. Casinos would hurt the average person. But I am in favor of establishing casinos at Midway Airport and O'Hare Airport behind the security gate. And that would be a way for business travelers or recreational travelers who choose to gamble and play games of chance to get that out of the system. But then you wouldn't be impacting homes. Here's what would happen. You'd have family members who would get addicted to gambling, and as a result, you'd have people who would lose their homes, and who would suffer? The children. The only way that I would consent to a casino is if we had an insurance policy that said if somebody comes here and loses their mind gambling, then you all pay to keep them in their homes.
Okay. All right. Another question from our young people. We know that if you're a lawyer, you know there are a lot of young people in jail because of use of marijuana, and their future is somewhat tainted. How do you stand about the legalization of marijuana for recreational use?
I've been paying careful attention to what they're doing in Colorado, in Washington State, and I've noticed that the crime levels have dropped tremendously. And you all know why, because a person will say, now what was that I was getting ready to do? So,
is that what they say? I don't know, is that what they say?
So yeah, no, I would favor the legalization even of recreational marijuana. But here's the interesting thing.
Okay.
It's just like they used to have the policy wheel here in Chicago. And that generated income in the community. They got rid of the policy wheel and created the lottery. So the state benefited. And we've always said that as soon as they can figure out how to tax marijuana, they're going to make it legal. Isn't that what they're doing? They have dispensaries popping up all over, even here in Illinois. And step by step, it's going to become recreational.
Okay. We got some real bad news today about the Jackie Robinson All-Star Little League team. They were stripped of their title. We talked to the other candidates. This is one of those add-on questions because it's news of the day question. What do you think of that?
They are still champions in our eyesight. Those little children just played baseball. And I haven't seen the actual boundaries because this boils down to geographical boundaries, not an issue of drugs or stimulants or human hormone growth abuse or anything like that. This is about whether or not the map outlining the Great Lakes Little League was accurate and followed. I think that Little League should have approved the map, and I think it's been public all the time where those children live. The other issue that I have is many of those children were homeless. You know, when we closed down the projects, 210,000 people were displaced, and they were pushed out into those southern suburbs. So the question for me becomes, did some of those children have an address in one area because their parents wanted them to go to a better school in their grandmother's house, but they actually lived in the boundary? I think there are a lot of questions that have to be asked. Chicago is unique. As I described earlier, we have unique circumstances. We live in gang communities. Gang lines are clearly drawn. The police recognize them. The city recognizes them. So sometimes parents do extraordinary things to keep their children safe, but I don't want those children to feel as though they were cheaters. Because you go from champion to cheater, that can be traumatic to these young children. I want to inspire them. I want to see us have a rally, welcoming them back into our society and letting them know no matter what, we love you.
Thank you.
I got one more question.
This must be a good
If elected, it's from our students.
When elected?
All right, when? He's good. Would you work to get the minimum wage increased to $15 an hour?
Absolutely. Not only that, it's most important for me to actually have some real jobs that will pay $15 an hour. I could promise you $100 an hour, but if then there are no jobs, that means absolutely nothing to you. And that's why we have two great economic development programs to create 100,000 self-perpetuating private sector jobs. And this is money that's already in place for spending at the discretion of the mayor. So we can do this the moment I take office. So go to my website, wallsformayor.com, and look at our policies and see the kinds of things that we want to do for Chicago. And everybody, punch 5 to come alive. I'm off the hook.
All right. Now, our format is you get the final say.
Okay.
You have the floor to yourself and talk to us about your final thoughts on this campaign.
How long do I get?
How long does he get, Madeline?
He gets 5 minutes.
5 minutes. That's a long time now.
Let's go. All right. So I can pick up where I left off earlier. No, the one thing about me is I love Chicago. I'm a Chicagoan. I grew up a young black male in Chicago, and I played sports, as Art indicated, and that took me all across the city of Chicago. I played cornerback in high school and safety in college at Tuskegee. I played 2 years for Tuskegee and used to alternate first team with an All-American, so I was pretty good. Wow. I had hopes of going pro, and then I had lung surgery, so that ended that. But, you know, I grew up and I know the hard times that young African-American males have in this town. And that's not to discount anybody else's experience, because we all have different challenges. But it seems to be a true assault on young black men in this society, and we all need to come together and declare a truce. We have to bridge that gap between cops and community, tear down that wall that separates them. I want a young black man who says, I want to be a police officer, to be revered and respected and appreciated and applauded by their peers instead of looked down upon. You know, policing is a noble profession. You have to be brave and you have to be compassionate. And most police officers are all of those things. We have a few bad apples, and of course, they spoil the reputation of the others. I don't want young black men to feel as though they have nothing to live for, and so they're willing to do anything to anybody else. And if we don't take care of them, then we have incidents like we had this summer down at Navy Pier, where people are down there wilding out, and it's starting to spread from community to community. So you have to take care of the weakest link. I'm the only person who can unify this city only candidate for mayor, who can unify the city by promoting cultural and diversity sensitivity amongst people of all ages, races, socioeconomic backgrounds, all religious persuasions, all sexual orientations, all physical and mental disabilities and limitations. I know what it takes to get these things done. I have the sensitivity to want to get those things done. That is my highest priority, making certain that everybody has a place in the city of Chicago. I was speaking earlier about how we're living in a global economy, and we can't simply discard one group of people and think that Chicago's going to be okay. The Brookings Institute indicated that among the cities in the world, Chicago ranks 203rd out of 300 cities. We have yet to reach the level that we were at prior to the recession in terms of GDP and in terms of employment. Those things are important. Chicago hasn't had an industry to call its own since the demise of the stockyards. And we're going downhill. The stockyards were everything to us, and then we got fancy. And we said, not in our backyard. I smell it all the way to 79th Street. So they closed down the stockyards and everybody went to Gary, Indiana to work in the steel mills. And then China out-hustled us, so the steel mill jobs went away and people came back to Chicago without any skill and any ability to actually initiate economic development for themselves or in their community. And then the politics came into play, so Chicago is in bad shape, and we've got a lot of work to do. One of the most major things that I'd like to do, how much more time? One more minute. One of the most major things that I need to do as mayor of the city of Chicago is transition Chicago from a debt-to-fund services revenue and expenditure system into a pay-as-you-go revenue and expenditure system. Right now, we do the equivalent of paying our bills with a credit card. That's like paying your rent with the credit cards. We cannot continue to do that. So we have a program to transition Chicago and get to the point where we're paying as we go. Why? Because our debt service, that's the money that we have to pay in interest to bankers, this year alone is $900 million. It'll only grow worse. And that means that although we have a budget of $8.9 billion, we only have $8 billion to actually spend because $900 million goes to bankers. We have to turn those things around. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very, very much.
William Doc Walls, thank you.
Thank you for the invitation to be here at Columbia College. I just met your president, Dr. Kim. Delighted to be here. My relationship with some of the pioneers and I think founders of this organization actually go back quite a few years. I had the distinct honor of knowing and working and engaging and forming a relationship, a friendship relationship with people like Vernon Jarrett, someone who has passed, but someone who certainly made an impression. A founder, all right, yes. And and speaking of some of those folks, the man whose voice is unequaled in Chicago media, Art Norman, and also a great longtime acquaintance, and of course, thank you for, for the invite, President Kathy Cheney and Lynn Norman, who I just met, and of course, Richard Steele. I already mentioned Dorothy Tucker, and I'm delighted to be here tonight to share some thoughts with you about why I took the step of running for mayor of Chicago, a little bit of my vision, and then of course we'll get into the question and answer period that will probably be most productive and relevant to each and every one of you. I decided to run for mayor because I believe the city is at a crossroads. The path that we've been on works for a select few in the city of Chicago. I'd like to put the city back, put it on a different path and a different road so that the city can prosper for everyone in the city of Chicago, particularly Chicago neighborhoods that have been left behind. I'm deeply rooted in Chicago neighborhoods, having lived in 2 neighborhoods since the time I arrived in Chicago in 1965. My passion for Chicago neighborhoods, for the entire city of Chicago, has been fueled by things that I learned along the way, having been inspired by people like Dr. Martin Luther King, Cesar Chavez, community activists throughout the city of Chicago. And building good, healthy communities has been a passion of mine through the years. I have become a community builder over that time. I have fought for social justice. I have been a practitioner of community development, addressing some of the most intractable issues that we face in many communities over many years, including violence in our communities, particularly as it relates to young people, addressing the challenge of how you develop and build good schools in the city of Chicago, particularly in low-income communities. We've done that in places like Little Village and many other communities where I was colleague to community builders that are also committed to making those things a reality and connecting communities across race, across ethnicity, across lines of faith, and really looking for common ground as to how we can put our city on a course that ensures equity for all, respect for people throughout the city of Chicago, for young people, for workers, for the homeless, for the disenfranchised in the city of Chicago. I decided to get into this race when it became clear that the person I was backing, Karen Lewis, would not be able to make the run. She called on me to think about it. I was, of course, surprised, but not totally taken aback, because for many years I considered the thought of how Chicago could work differently if there were someone on the 5th floor who could lead the city, embracing all of its people, tapping its assets and potential to make it a city that can truly work for everyone with guiding principles of equity, both economic and racial equity. As we have traveled over the past 3 and almost a half months in this journey to capture City Hall in the name of people throughout Chicago, I've learned much. I have met many great people who share that same passion and drive to want to see a different Chicago. It is essential that Chicago change course right now, and in order to make that happen, I believe that I'm the best suited candidate, given my history in actual community building in Chicago, given my network of progressive community builders, given my work in philanthropy over the years, and of course, given my political learning and experience, having been a member of the Chicago City Council during the time when Harold Washington was elected mayor, prevailing in council wars and electing the most democratically and diverse administration in the city's history, in the state senate, standing up for important public policies that, of course, empowered racial minorities, women, and other disenfranchised groups in the Illinois Senate. And then more recently, over the past 4 years, as a member of the Cook County Board of Commissioners and Tony Preckwinkle's floor leader, where we took a government that was adrift, gave it purpose, set it on a new course, and won the respect of taxpayers throughout Cook County. While we did significant things in the area of criminal justice, reducing the jail population, especially over the past 2 years, from approximately 10,000 to 8,600 and continuing to go down. recognizing that there is a disproportionate incarceration of minorities in Cook County, that there are many disparities that lead to that grim picture, that reality, and we're addressing it. Chicago needs new leadership. I believe that I have the ability to bring together a multiracial, multi-ethnic coalition rooted in important principles of equity, and that we will have an opportunity to make an important mark on the city's history on February 26th. Chicago, in order to become a truly world-class city, must have world-class neighborhoods. They must become the great priority of a new administration, and I think that my life's work has prepared me for leading the city over the next 4 years and ushering in a new period of democracy, of inclusion, and most importantly, of equity for all the citizens in the city of Chicago. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Please stay there. This is a question from our audience.
Sure.
Your history with the Harold Washington Coalition is well known. What are you currently doing to build a Black Latino coalition?
I have remained very loyal and passionate about cultivating the potential of these two communities, the African American and Latino communities. Why? Because together they comprise a majority of the population in the city of Chicago. While having different historical experiences, many of the challenges for both of these communities are quite similar in terms of overcoming some of the historical barriers that the communities have had. One of the initiatives that I've been a founder of over the past 8 years is known as the United Congress of Community and Religious Organizations, where we have brought together people of color, including Asian, Muslim, Latino, and African Americans, to discuss policy initiatives at the city, state, and federal levels that can forge a common agenda among these communities, addressing issues of inequality, of stereotyping, and ensuring, especially issues in areas of criminal justice, of housing, of economic development, are addressed in those different legislative halls at both local and federal and state levels. This is a part of the work and a part of the reflection of my commitment to bring Chicago's diversity together for the common good. As we move forward over the next 2 weeks that are left before the February 24th election, we have a tremendous opportunity to bring the two communities together, as well as the rest of the city of Chicago, in a democratic coalition that can win, that can demonstrate to the rest of the country that if cities like New York and Chicago can come together and fight against a corporate agenda that features the dominance of the super rich and the super powerful, and end the control that they've had over the city of Chicago, that next year, presidential year, when congressional elections will also be held, can bode well for initiatives like an urban agenda, the rebuilding of America's infrastructure, as well as creating thousands and thousands of job opportunities for people everywhere in the country. This is a momentous occasion, a historic opportunity that we face to address America's needs, not to be left behind. Our systems of infrastructure are crumbling. It's a great opportunity to put people to work at a great scale and to stimulate the economy and to address inequities, historic inequality. Thank you.
We've got a couple of other questions.
Yes.
This is also from the audience. Are you in favor of an elected school board?
I do support an elected school board. I was a member of the Illinois Senate when the bill to take away even the city council's authorization or approval requirement in the city council to the mayor's appointments. I think it's high time to join the rest of the state of Illinois, because even Rahm Emanuel's home high school, New Trier High School in Winnetka, has an elected school board. If it's good enough for Winnetka, it's good enough for Chicago. It's time to move in that direction. The citizens of Chicago deserve more control and say-so over who administers the policy of the Chicago Public Schools.
In last night's debate, you mentioned that you and candidate Fioretti had a deal not to attack each other. During the campaign, Fioretti obviously ignored that deal. Do you feel betrayed? And if so, does that mean the gloves are off for you the next 2 weeks?
Our campaigns engage in conversations about the future of the city, and that both of our campaigns represent change for people in Chicago, and that thus we would concentrate on exposing the lies, the broken promises of this administration over the course of the campaign. I have been true to that commitment and that spirit. I don't feel betrayed at what has occurred. For me, the important thing is to continue to build momentum for regime change in the city of Chicago, and to build a progressive coalition, a diverse coalition that can triumph and become the will of the people in a new administration in Chicago.
So that means that you will not attack Fioretti or any of the other candidates?
He is not my opponent. He is a mayoral aspirant, and I will continue to treat him with the highest respect.
Okay. This is a question actually from the students here at Columbia. There is a lack of hospital trauma centers on the south and west sides. How would you fix this problem?
The south side of the city of Chicago is the most underserved part of Chicago and the region in terms of access to trauma services. I believe that the South Side needs a trauma center like other parts of the city and the county have. I think the University of Chicago needs to step up and embrace the idea, accept the demands that have been made on it by the surrounding communities. This is how you demonstrate that you are a good partner. I would also entertain the idea of sitting with them when elected mayor, as well as with the Cook County Health and Hospital System, to discuss how we can create a trauma center on the south side of the city.
Another question. How will you make it easier for ex-felons trying to re-enter the workforce qualify for business licenses?
I support the movement to ban the box so as to ban the box that asks employment applicants whether they have a conviction, because it keeps people, especially people who have been incarcerated, and the disproportionate impact on African Americans and Latino men in particular, from having a shot at getting a job.
I've got a couple of notes up here, but I don't know. Sometimes it's better to speak from the heart than talk about what we are doing. You know, I do believe Chicago's headed in the wrong, and first of all, this is, I've been in this auditorium a number of times because the Second Ward is Columbia is part of the Second Ward. Oh. And it depends on what you need under the old map or the new map. So if you want your garbage picked up, you got to see me. If you want zoning, you see another alderman. So, wow. And I will also tell you, when I was elected in '07, I was the first white Caucasian person out of the historic black ward, the Second Ward, where history was made. And it was 76% African American. I had more parks than any other ward, and I've built 5 more parks. And I found the funds for it. I had more schools than any other ward, and so it got me the flavor of what happens with our schools. More senior citizen homes, 22, almost 40 schools, and so I learned a lot about the city of Chicago. I'm also a big bicyclist. Nikki and I, my better half, we bike all the time, and we've created a Bike the Ward on all the historical landmarks in the Second Ward. From some woman who had a cow who knocked over something that caused a small fire, and I always say that the Cubs, the curse of the Cubs is not the fact that of the goat, but they moved from the Second Ward right off of Taylor Street over on Polk to somewhere on the north side. So that's the real curse. Anyway, and I have been honored and I am humbled to represent and sit in the city council because it is an awesome responsibility. And it is an awesome responsibility to become a mayor of this city. But over the last 8 years, I've seen that this city, and especially an accelerated pace, that this city is moving in the wrong direction. And I'm running for mayor because I love our city. And as Art said, my values were shaped on the South Side by my working class parents, an Italian immigrant father and a Polish American mother. I did become a civil rights lawyer, and as alderman, I push a progressive agenda in the city council. And as a civil rights lawyer, I fought to right the wrongs in our justice system. And as alderman, I move an agenda that serves all the people and all working class families in our city, and not just the top ones. You know, I have fought corporate giveaways. I have marched with our families for a living wage, and I have made sure that people here in our city are presented with common sense proposals, which I have done repeatedly. I had to take a little sip there. 4 years ago, I was thinking about running for mayor because at that point I thought this city was running in the wrong direction then. Today's the 10th. Almost 4 years ago today, I had my last radiation treatment. I'm cancer-free.
All right.
You know?
All right. Yeah.
And it also gave me a new direction and a new outlook on what happens. I lost 50 pounds. I put 40-some back on. I had 33 hits of radiation, 7 minutes, 36 seconds, and a lot of chemo. It was interesting, though. I didn't lose my hair on the top of my head. It is real, as we keep joking, but I lost it all in here. So I didn't have to shave for quite a long period of time. Wow. I had a feeding tube for 8 months. Wow. And I was in pain for almost 2 years. And so every time I hear about medical marijuana, I'm willing to hear from other people that can take new approaches. Because when I was I never missed a city council meeting. My neck size went from 18, and all this excess here it's down to 16, 18 and a quarter down to 16. But I always used to have, in the back of the city council meetings, and I was like this, because you get so weak from the treatments. And my doctor said I should take 4 months off and not do anything. And I had a collapsing law firm. I was of counsel, really, to my own law firm, and it was collapsing. And I was a victim of the recession, just like everybody else, because a lot of our clients had to go into bankruptcy and were fighting what's happening in our streets. But it gave me a perspective. And I want to say on that medical marijuana that people would come behind city council chambers and they'd say, "Hey, how's the pain? You not need anything from pain management?" And they go, and I was like, "What do you mean?" And I said, "It's in my throat. So how do you take a joint?" But that's neither here nor there. And it did give me a perspective. Gave me a different perspective of just not only fighting for civil rights, but fighting for people, fighting for health care. And as I said it for when the president was running, I was lucky. I had maybe $500,000 worth of health care, from the treatments to everything. And I was more than ever determined from that experience that the same kind of health care that got me to where I am now, healthy, able to withstand what we can, that everyone in this city and in this nation should have the same kind of health care I had across the board, no matter who you are or what you are. It really wasn't, we're not really talking about me, but we're talking about a vision. You know, and on election day, we have a choice. I believe the same from career politicians, and we can have more of that. You can choose the one guy on one side of me last night or the other guy on the other side of me last night. Or you can have somebody that has fought in the trenches across the board. I've fought with the teachers. I didn't fight with them. I fought with them. I have been a complete advocate on what they do. I have resolved the issues when we talk about restorative justice. I've worked on the crime problems in my ward. I've had 6 police districts that affect the old ward and 3 in the new ward. I know how to solve the problems that affect everyday citizens because I, too, am an everyday citizen. So I could talk for quite a while and go through all the things on public safety, education, jobs, but I'd rather hear questions from you and what you have to say, and I'll give you the answer.
All right, thank you, Mr. Alderman. Our first question comes from one of our students. He's a future journalist of tomorrow. You are on record as saying increasing the minimum wage to $13 an hour by the year 2019 was a good first step, but not enough, end of quote. Now, if elected, will you work to get the minimum wage increased to $15 an hour? If so, by what year?
Well, yes. How's that? I don't think, and I said on the floor of the council, I voted for it, but I've been an advocate for $15 an hour from day one. We need to raise it to $15 an hour, especially companies that have revenues over $50 million. Now, let's take a look at some of them. Walmart. I mean, I just shake my head. The mayor's really fond of Walmart down in Pullman. I mean, this is in Arkansas, Mr. Mayor, you know, at minimum wage, and especially the one on the west side. It just doesn't work. We need to go, and they have their profits are $4 billion. McDonald's, $1 billion. Yum Candies, $1 billion. I want the minimum wage raised to $15 an hour now. I also said when I was sitting down and right before I looked at the mayor's floor leader, who also is chair of the workforce development, and I said, you know what? We need to raise it, but you need to work with small businesses that can't, and we've got to find ways to help small businesses at the same time. I'm waiting for the first meeting so they can start working with small businesses that need help here in this city, because those are the backbone of what this city's about.
The city has this huge pension liability to fund its retired employees. You have proposed a commuter tax for those people working in the city and living outside the city, and reducing the size of city departments, especially in the mayor's office. What jobs would you eliminate from the mayor's office? This is from our students.
Oh, there's a whole host of them.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. The unfortunate thing, especially if since everybody's in PR here, this mayor has almost assigned PR specialists and media specialists to every department. And they've raised the pay on those considerably. I think that's one way that we need to look at it, focus, bring them together. That's number one. Number two, I'm also on record, and it's not really sometimes not as clear, we need to get rid of our city council needs to be downsized. Scott Wagasback and I introduced a legislation, a map that had 35 wards, and just by coincidence, it was almost two communities per ward. And it's 77,000 people per ward. That may be an ideal start, or we can look at the city of San Diego, which has 1.6. They only have 8 aldermen. LA, which has 3.2 million, they have 15 aldermen. And we're a lot lower than that, so we can be cutting. How
do you stand on elected school board?
I have been on record. Nobody ever had to twist my arm on it. One of the other candidates was just recently, after all these years in politics, decided that we should have an elected school board. I've been in favor of it. I've introduced legislation calling for it, resolutions with my other progressive members, and we've called for having it on the ballot the last 2 times, but the mayor has had it bottled up in Rules Committee.
Where do you stand on, you talked about it briefly, about the use of marijuana for medical reasons. Where do you stand on the use of marijuana for recreational use?
Well, first of all, I am in favor of a decriminalization. I don't know if that's the right word, because it's not legalization. We have on the books right now an ordinance that if you get a ticket. The problem with the ticket or the police officer can arrest you. And I will also say the problem with our medical marijuana clinics, and this is where it becomes complex. Nobody's thought this out. The average price for medical marijuana will be $400 an ounce. It's going to be a fact. So if you've been if you're one of the 60-some categories that needs medical marijuana, you go to the clinic, you have to pay cash because there's this whole system under the federal government that has not allowed it to be illegal. Now, $400 an ounce is, I think it's pretty expensive. It's more than the street. So you're working stiff. You're trying to help your kid who, how many times can you afford $400 an ounce? So now what you do is you go down to the corner and buy the marijuana. How can anybody, and if you get arrested, what's your defense? You know, it's a necessity. You see, this whole thing has been tangled up and handled wrong here in this state. And then the next thing, and I will tell you, anybody, I had to speak in June. I was asked to speak at a conference here. We had 150 plus lawyers that came in from all over, the big companies. This is a $1 billion industry. And who do we give our first medical marijuana license to but a strip club owner in the city of Chicago? Now, is that right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So now when we think about how complex this is getting, now you're buying from the kid on the street, and you can see the entanglements. We all know that communities of color are the ones that are getting arrested for this, and they're the ones. Now, how do we say to everybody who's been arrested, served time, got it on their record, can't get jobs? This is a very complex issue. It's not by giving out the medical marijuana. We need to come out and look at what we've done. And by the way, I want to see how many of these vendors that have the medical licenses, because there's the dispensary license, and then there's the growing license. How many of them are giving to minorities, women, a breakdown across the board? I already know. They've come in to see me for locations, and I'm like, no way. You know, they haven't broken up their licenses.
Your background is really indigenous to the black community. You've served us well as a civil rights lawyer. But tonight, many in the black community, in fact, all communities, are a little upset because of the stripping of the Jackie Robinson Little League Baseball team title. Where do you stand on that? And if you're a mayor and this happened under your watch, what would you do?
Well, I did issue a press release today, and I wish I had it in front of me word for word. I am disappointed. It's to me, I grew up playing Little League in Roseland, as a matter of fact. Oh, wow. And if I just read it to the U.S. News and World Report, because I found my program from 1964 when I was playing there. And I remember the one catch when I had to go out and against the fence, and I had it like this, and I felt like I was Willie Mays when I made that catch. You know, I am disappointed. I'm not disappointed at the kids. You know, it wasn't their doing. But I am disappointed at the adults. And whichever way we look at it. You know, and it
should
wasn't.
Should the kids have been stripped?
No. You know what? If we should have done something some other way, but it taught everybody a lesson. And see, it's like, to me, it's a punch in the stomach. It's taken the wind out of me. I mean, I was out watching it at one of the games at Ray Kroc Center. Nikki and I were sitting in the middle of State Street in the Chicago Theater because they had these screens there, and it was the most awesome. And those kids were about hope, they were about confidence. They brought not only did they bring our communities together in our city, but they brought our nation together. And I am disappointed about how sometimes adults treat things in this society. These kids were good kids. I met them all. I gave a speech on the day of when they came to see the city council. But I tried to tell them, as I've told all of our winning teams, that it's not about what you've just done. It's really to get a good education, get out there, get involved with your community, get a good job, give back to your community. These kids are just beginning. I don't know how we're going to deal with it, how psychologically we're going to deal with those kids, because they really have, I mean, hell, I've only been to the White House a couple of times. I wasn't somebody's chief of staff. And I was invited by a few times. But to get invited to the White House because of what you did, so we need to make sure that we're going to help them. And whatever we can for those kids. And I'm not sure what we can do right now, but we need to help them.
All right, our format is now we get to the point where you get to make closing remarks. You've got 5 minutes, and we want to say thank you very much for coming and supporting Columbia College and the National Association of Black Journalists. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody. I do have some other notes, and I'm going to try to think about what I really want to say in a closing, because I don't think you need to hear me for 5 minutes. You know, as I said, Chicago is moving in the wrong direction. You know, I want a Chicago that works for everybody, not just the special donors that give to one campaign or the big donors that give to another. We need a mayor that looks out for everybody in this city. No matter who you are, what zip code you live in, everybody should be treated fairly. Chicago has a lot of problems, and we all know that. You know, like we could start off with jobs and economic opportunities in our communities. We need to bring the jobs from the downtown area to our neighborhoods. And I have to say, you know, it's interesting. And when I say this, because the downtown section, and those of you that have never really analyzed it, has grown by almost a fluke. And it's because of the universities. The 16 of them, we've got 64 to 70,000 students that come down here, 15,000 employees. I don't even know what the number is now, how many live in the South Loop and the West Loop because of the universities. If it wasn't for this development, our downtown wouldn't be what it is. And it happened by fluke. Columbia, of course, you know, you've got a great number of buildings down here, a great number of places, the kids are here, and it becomes a 24/7 area. So how do we bring those jobs to our neighborhoods? Now, we need to create tax-free zones. We need to surplus TIFs, make sure that the TIFs, the money, it goes into our neighborhoods then. You know, at the same time, we've got a crime problem out there. And how do we solve crime problems? I'm the only candidate up there other than the mayor who has brought jobs to our communities. 500 good paying jobs at Rush, Target, Costco, closed the food desert at Madison and Western. I'm the only alderman in the whole of the city council, probably in the whole of the lifetime, that closed the food desert. And healthy foods, which we need instead of some of these sugar shack places and S&S, I call them a sugar and salt. But crime gets solved by giving people jobs. This summer and last summer, I found a program out of the state. I hired 35 young people from 16 to 22 this summer, and they had to be from low-income families. They came from all parts of the city. Same with last year, and they worked hard. And I also got them, some of them are now docents at one of the museums. Some of them are being mentored by the Chicago Police Department because they want to go into law enforcement. At the same time, we do need to solve our fiscal problem now, especially our pensions. When Art mentioned the issue about the commuter tax, it's just not the commuter tax by itself. It's a commuter tax coupled with a pension obligation bond. 1% tax on those that live elsewhere. In the aggregate, it would generate, first of all, it would generate $357 million annually. It's from those people that live elsewhere, from Milwaukee to Hammond to everywhere else. They make $30 billion in the aggregate, $30 billion per year. And they don't spend it here, they spend it in their own communities. We need to look also on how we get strong support for our neighborhood schools. We need to find the resources because that's going to be the only way that we're going to improve our school system. Income inequality is a driving issue and the underlying issue of this election, whether it's crime, education, or economic development. And why? I'll just give you one last example. I had two schools for 2 different Friday nights. One down here, 350 some students, K through 8. The Parents' Night made $117,000. The other school with about 200 more students on the far west side. Great principal, one of the best principals I've ever seen. Black and brown students. They had a parents' night, they barely made $5,000. It's because of what happens. And so how do you compete against that? Income inequality is the driving force, but we need to find the resources for our neighborhood schools. And if there is a political way, we can. Not by listening to what the mayor says, we need an elected school board. We need to get rid of people that are up there for political favoritism, who cut the inside deals to help their own corporations. They all have to go. Now, at the same time, when I started off about how we have a vision about safe streets and strong neighborhoods, it's about the small businesses that we must help, because those are the key to for what we see. It's not the big companies that come in, the corporate headquarters and all that. It's by bringing in the little ones. So I want to say in closing that if you're happy with the way things are going in this city, because my vision is different from the mayor's, but if you're happy with the way things are going, then welcome to the 1%. If not, I need your vote on election day, because I can do it. We're going to change this direction. And my pledge to you is that every day I'm going to work hard for every community across this city to make this city the best city, because I do believe our better days are still ahead of us. Thank you, everybody.
Chicago Alderman Bob Fioretti. Thank you very much. Nice job. Nice job. Good job.